Hello, everyone. It's Alex Pat, and welcome back to another personal podcast of mine. It has been a while since I have done this, so good to be back doing it again. Just a reminder that you could follow me on Twitter at ShyFanPat1, where you can see all the publications and podcasts I am contributing for, which includes Swirsky Sports Talk Chicago, Sports Sanity with E-Rock, and writing for BlastingNews.com, Windy City Chronicle, Wrigley Rapport, and The Sports Talk. And you could see that all in my Twitter bio, so feel free to visit that, and any other questions you may have, feel free to leave in the comments, or any other comments you may have, also feel free to comment, whether it is contact information for me, seeing any publications, or anything about this particular video. So we're just going to get right into it, and we are talking about the Chicago Bears as the season is ready to get underway this Sunday at Soldier Field against Atlanta. Yeah, it's another year of Bears football, and yeah, it's coming off another bad year of Bears football, and there's a lot of questions and concerns about the team. And obviously, the biggest thing that everyone's talking about is Mitchell Trubisky, which has been talked about ever since he was drafted second overall in that very, very controversial move by Ryan Pace in the draft. At first, I was kind of pissed about it and just kind of flabbergasted over the whole thing. But it's at the point now where you just got to say, hey, this is the guy of the future. This is what we're going to work with, and we better hope that he turns out correctly. And if he does, then the move will look pretty darn good. But regardless, Ryan Pace's reputation does indeed hold on that pick. I mean, he sealed his fate right there. And I don't think there's much question about that. So, we go into the season. Preseason is over. They went 2-2. Not that record really matters. And there were a lot of things to take away from the preseason. Some goods, some bads, and still some questions. I think we all know what we saw from Mitch Trubisky in the preseason was pretty darn impressive. The way he's accurate with his throwing, the way he plays under pressure so easily, the way he was able to move around with his feet, all very, very impressive. And of course, you can, say a lot of his work was against third stringers, but the pure athleticism and talent that he showed on the field, I think is worth noting, and it might give you a good idea of what Mitchell Trubisky may be able to do in the NFL. Obviously, time will tell what it looks like in real games, but, for right now, I think there is reason to be optimistic about Mitchell Trubisky's future in the NFL. And the big news right now is that he has been moved to the second string behind Mike Glennon, who will be starting against Atlanta. And Mike Glennon, who was signed in the offseason, making $18 million guaranteed this year. What we saw from him in the preseason was really nothing more than mediocrity. I mean, he was completing some dump passes and some screens, but he didn't really throw downfield well. He threw a couple of picks, and he just didn't look like a starting quarterback to me. Obviously, he could be a valuable backup with what I saw, but look, I think that it's pretty obvious that Glennon is going to be ridden out as much as he can by the Bears. He was their big signing, and they're going to ride him out as much as they can. But I think by mid-season, and I'm not the only one who thinks this, I know that, Mitchell Trubisky, you'll see him starting games. And whether it's Mike Glennon doesn't do well, or Mike Glennon gets hurt, which is also very possible, then Mitch Trubisky has been confirmed to be the next guy up, putting him number 2, with Mark Sanchez number 3 behind him, which some may see as kind of weird, but whatever. It doesn't bother me that much having him on the roster, to be honest with you. But you look at everything else on the offense, you have a running back core that has all sorts of promise and all sorts of talent. 1,313 rushing yards in the rookie year of Jordan Howard last year, and he didn't even start in the first 2 games. He's looking to have just as good, if not better, of a sophomore season. A lot of promise with him. Terry Cohen, the human joystick, he'll be fun to watch, hopefully. I mean, we saw him in the preseason. The guy may be short, but boy, could he move around. And you saw how frustrated that people were getting trying to tackle him. And he's got some raw talent. And I think that a lot of people during the draft, when they saw the Bears take him, a decent amount of people said they're getting kind of an underrated guy right there. So you hope for the best there. Third string, you have Benny Cunningham Jr., which is a good thing to have for special teams because he plays special teams and he had a pretty solid preseason. And then behind that, you have Taquan Mizzell, who they just got, with Jeremy Langford being cut, considering that he was probably the odd man out either way, even with Kadeem Carey going on IR. He wasn't healthy, his foot was bothering him, and we kind of went from the running back of the future to being cut. So very interesting career for Jeremy Langford so far, but, he'll go elsewhere and he might still do okay. The line itself is pretty good on paper. Kyle Long and Josh Sitton are two of the best guards in football. Cody Whitehair has shown a lot of talent. Obviously, health is the biggest concern for Kyle Long, who had the ankle surgery last year and didn't participate in preseason games. So that's kind of a worry right there. Bobby Massey, Charles Leno Jr., they're not the greatest, but Charles Leno Jr. may be decent, and Bobby Massey, maybe okay at best. But overall, the line looks pretty good. Over at tight end, you got Deion Sims first, Zach Miller second, and the rookie Adam Shaheen third. You also have Daniel Brown on the roster going into week one. Zach Miller, we all know what he can do. Deion Sims could be solid there at tight end. Adam Shaheen, obviously a rookie, and we're going to see how he transitions into the NFL out of a D2 school. The guy's really big. He's got a lot of talent. He just has to settle in. And we saw some drops for him in the preseason, but he had really good hands in college. And I think that just some work and some, help with him is going to make him go a long way. And sometimes it's just what happens with rookies. You just kind of got to work with them and go through the growing pains. So the offense's biggest weakness is no doubt for me the wide receiver core. Losing Cam Meredith to an ACL injury done for the season, that really stinks because, he's your best guy. And now that he's gone, you got to rely on Kevin White. And the first pick of the 2015 draft a few years ago, well, he's been hurt most of his time as a Bear and still kind of hard to know what he is. So that's a big question mark right there. Kendall Wright was probably going to be the most reliable guy in my eyes. It's not saying too much, but that's the truth. Then you'll have Deontay Thompson, Trey McBride III, Josh Bellamy. It's really not a wide receiver core that's going to put any scare into anyone, that's for sure. But, you got what you got right now, and they got to try to make it work. So overall, I think the offense has its strengths, weaknesses, and questions. I don't think it'll be the worst offense in the league because I think the running game is so good. And I also think depending on what happens with Glennon and Trubisky, things are going to swing a lot there. But I don't think it's ever going to be a high-powered pumping offense this year at least. So don't expect too much of that. So we go to really the strongest part of the Bears, and that's the front seven. And the front seven, who looked awesome in preseason. You got a heck of a line there that's headed up by Akeem Hicks, one of the most underappreciated players out there. The Bears really should extend him because he is well worth it. And your linebacking core of Danny Trevathan, Javale Freeman, Pernell McPhee, Leonard Floyd, that right there is a nice spread of solid guys and potential really good player in Leonard Floyd. And I think we're all looking at him this year to really make a difference because he's shown he has the talent, and I think that he can have a really good year if he's healthy and whatnot. It's also good that he's playing with a lot of good players around him. I think Trevathan and Freeman, Willie Young, Leonard Floyd can really work as a good unit if they all stay healthy. And also, don't forget Nick Kwiatkowski there on the inside linebacker position behind Danny Trevathan, the second unit. He's shown a lot of promise in preseason. And then you have Christian Jones behind Jarrell Freeman in the inside. Leonard Floyd, Willie Young will be your outside starters, and you have Pernell McPhee and Sam Acho as the second on the outside linebackers. So, good group of guys, very solid. I think they can do some really good things. We lost Lamar Houston. That was kind of a sucky loss. He wasn't going to be a starter, but he was good depth, so that did kind of stink there. But still, overall, a solid linebacking core for the Bears. And then we get to the secondary, which isn't great, but I think it's definitely improved compared to where it's been. Quentin Demps could be a solid veteran over there at safety. Eddie Jackson, the rookie, is, I think, probably the biggest focal point on the secondary this year. I think a lot of people are high on him, and I think he's got a lot of athletic skill that can carry himself a long way in that position. So we'll see what he does there. And then, you got your Cre'Von LeBlancs and your Bryce Callahans, your Deion Bush, your Adrian Amos, and your Kyle Fuller. Let's see what happens with him there. I don't think a lot of people are really high on Kyle Fuller anymore. He missed last year, but he's going to have to prove himself this year, and I think this is kind of his last chance. So the corners, you got Prince Amukamara starting and Marcus Cooper Sr. ahead of Callahan and Fuller in the corner position. Cre'Von LeBlanc will be your third guy on the one side, and the other side you'll have Sharon McManus as your other third string. So, corners I think are going to be pretty questionable, but, if they're at least somewhat serviceable with that front seven, you can get away with that more if you constantly have pressure on the quarterback. And constantly having pressure on the quarterback with Hicks and Urian, Jonathan Bullard, those kind of guys, that can really help out your secondary. So, it's going to be key to have that front seven healthy and going, because that can make or break the defense right there. So I think that pretty much sums up those two ends of the ball. Special teams are not going to be anything too special, but I don't think they're going to be terrible either. I think looking at this team overall, you can say that they have a lot of talent. Okay, not a lot of talent, but they have some talent. They have talent in certain areas, a lot of youth, and they have a lot of holes as well. And that's what's going to keep them from being a contender. The wide receiver core, as I said, isn't great at all. The secondary is not that great, even with a good front seven. Mike Glennon, very questionable right now. The schedule is very hard to start out. They got to play Atlanta, then the Buccaneers, then the Steelers, then the Packers, and the Vikings. They have the hardest start in football in terms of the first 5 teams and their respective records from last year. So that can really make or break the Bears, and I think that's probably a stretch that's going to keep the Bears away from contention, because I do think that overall this is a competitive team, not a complete team. They're competitive because they have a decent amount of talent, but they don't have enough with too many holes to be a contending team. So, keep that in mind, that the Bears may be in a lot of close games. I think they will. I think they will be competitive in most of the games they play. They just won't have enough to win those games. A key drive from another team, or a key mistake, or just not adjusting with the certain right players at one point of a close game can break a lot of games for the Bears. Maybe just a fundamental dropped pass here or there, a miscommunication. There's just not quite enough talent to have this team contending, but there definitely is enough talent for this team to compete. And obviously the biggest concern I have is the injury problem, because 19 guys on IR last year, pretty bad, especially since you had no depth to back them up, and it was just a lot of practice squad guys. And that's another thing that the Bears have to build more of, is depth, because though the depth has gotten a bit better than it was the past few years, there still is lacking a lot of depth in many areas. So it's a slow process to build up. I think that if we see a significant improvement from a lot of areas of this Bears team this year, regardless of record, we'll count that as a win. And I think overall that this is a 5 or 6 win team. I don't think they'll be any worse than 4 unless they have injuries up the wazoo like last year. Because you saw last year, even with those injuries, they lost a lot of close games. So if they stay healthy, I think they could win a few more games, even with the tough schedule. You might see a few wins against a good team, because it seems like the Bears always beat a good team no matter how good or bad they are. I think they have a chance. This is my bold prediction. I think they'll beat the Steelers when they play them. I just think that because of the age of Ben Roethlisberger and the Bears' ability to shut down the run game so far, I think that's a game that they could possibly win to kind of shock people and surprise people. Other than that, I see wins against like the Browns, the Eagles. I think they beat the Lions once. So there's where I think a lot of their wins will come. But, facing teams like Atlanta, obviously the Packers, and even teams like the Panthers, who I think will have a rebound year, that's going to be really, really tough. For the Vikings even. So, yeah, competitive team, not a great team, not really a good team. But if they could at least stay competitive, stay somewhat healthy, see what a lot of the young guys can do, see how some of the sophomores adjust in their second or third season. And you got to hope for the best here with the injuries, because unfortunately we've already had a few significant ones, especially with Cam Meredith. But that pretty much wraps it up for my Bears season outlook here. And if you have any other comments or questions or concerns, feel free to let me know in the comments. Thanks, guys.